If you're looking for the type of show where the hot take person gives you the hot take, and then no matter what it is that happens to show that the hot take is off or has changed, the hot take persists as the hot take and sometimes even becomes the scalding take. Well, I'm not here for that. And if you are, you're in the wrong place. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. I spent the better part of the 9 days following the loss in Cleveland really going at the offensive line. Immediately after the game in Cleveland, I made it a point to interview not one of them, not two of them, not three of them, not four of them, but all five of the starters from that game to get their viewpoints, to ask about their own accountability for how they'd performed that night. I listed this at the time and through the week as being priority number one for this franchise to get these guys straight, or that failing, to replace them, at least as best they can this time of year. So what I'm not going to do, now that the Steelers beat the Bengals 44-38 Sunday in Cincinnati, is, just ignore them. Forget about it. Because I don't find that to be very fair, or fair at all. And if I was tough on anyone, especially tough, it was, of all people, young Zach Frazier, because I was calling into question, as were some of you, by the way, listen to this program and respond, why it was that the running game was so good when Ryan McCollum was in replacing him and why it wasn't so good in recent weeks with Frazier. So I approached Frazier in the room after the game in Cincinnati and said, how did that go? He's not one that's prone to really excessively wordy answers. This was what he had to say.
Yeah, felt like we couldn't do anything wrong. So games like that, it's a lot of fun. Credit to everyone being on top of their game, and games like that, it's a lot of fun.
Yep, that was it. It was basically his answer was scoreboard, and he's right. He's right. When you put up 44 points, when you get points out of almost every drive that you start, things have gone well. Now, when I'm in the room, I'm not anywhere near as informed as I am a day later, especially when it comes to the intricate parts of football in the trenches. You really do need the film for that. So I get back from Cincinnati, I give the game another look, a closer look, and they did the job. They did the job. All five of them. Did you hear Trey Hendrickson's name? Did you hear his name in that game? Did you notice him in that game? I don't believe that you would have, because he did get to the backfield occasionally. He didn't do any damage. Some guys from the Cincinnati front, which is a pretty good front, by the way, got back there, didn't get much done. Now, is part of that because Russell Wilson was excellent, and I mean at everything, including his rollouts, including his reads of the pass rush? Yes. Is part of that because Najee Harris, especially out of the three running backs, did a great job of blowing past pass rushers? In other words, they're coming in, he's heading the other way. It's like a turnstile. Yes. Did the wide receivers, did the tight ends, did everybody do a great job to help make this easier? Yes. Did the offensive line get the job done? The answer to that also is yes. And this, my friends, matters. And this now is absolutely the perfect time to have the Browns on a schedule just like that again. That's exactly the team you'd want these guys to face again. Which doesn't mean you have to do it exactly the same way. I didn't like leaving Dan Moore in isolation against Myles Garrett, even though he's had some success against Garrett in the past. It just struck me as kind of an excessive bravado type of move. I want to see Darnell Washington spend some time on that side. I want to see some sort of movement that corresponds, or an awareness at least, whenever Garrett moves about the Cleveland line. But I really want to see this offensive line seize upon what happened in Cincinnati, the good things that they did in Cincinnati, and build that up by burying the Browns and by burying what I think was one of their worst performances as they move into the ugly part of their schedule. Oh, and one additional shout out before we go to break, and that's for my man Broderick Jones. Jones is becoming, listen, he's not going to be perfect. It's still year 2 in the NFL for him, and he's experienced enough regression in the first 10 games or so of this season that it's going to take him a while to dig all the way out of that hole, but he was really good in Cincinnati. Again, not perfect, but really good, and it was a big step forward. This young man, and I believe this, he needs to function with a smile on his face. When I see him and he's not smiling, it's not okay. It's not natural. It feels weird to him. He's, without getting too deeply into this or sounding like I'm psychoanalyzing him or whatever, he's used to success. He's grown up with success individually and collectively. And I really feel like there were times here in 2024 that he got hit with stuff that he'd never faced, whether that was external, social media, internal, people wondering about this and that, being benched for Troy Fautanu, all that other stuff. And he had to learn how to deal with that. He had to learn to trust the people around him, to stick by him, to be his supporting staff, if you will. And I like the way he's responding to that. He's not a finished product. Still, I don't know that he will be by season's end. But Cincinnati, for him too, helped point that arrow upward as well. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q, and wow, I could have picked from a whole stack on this specific subject, comes from Dave, who asks, DK, if Calvin Austin is unable to go against the Browns this weekend, will we see a more prominent role for Mike Williams? 10 different players caught a pass from Russell Wilson in Cincinnati, and yet not one of them had number 18 on their back. I'm starting to wonder why Omar Khan even traded for Williams. Well, you're, again, Dave, hardly alone. This was outside of the probably the George Pickens fuss, over the penalties that he took and how that was viewed afterward. This was probably the next most common subject that anybody sent anything with, and it was all just this, like, what's this guy got to do? What's the weight here? My understanding, where Williams is concerned, is that there's no real magic to any of this. There's no hidden secret, oh no, they found this out and now they're disappointed or whatever. They want him, when he's out there, to be operating on all cylinders. They want him to be operating reflexively. They don't want him thinking, oops, I'm supposed to step here, or oops, I'm supposed to be there, when they have guys that they know they can at least put out there and have them be in the right spots. Now, if that seems short-sighted, whatever, right? You got to win games. And you've got to win games with the guys who'll give you the best chance to do that. I happen to be on your side, and maybe all of us are a little bit excessively biased by the fact that Williams just walked right off the sideline and won the game in Landover a couple of weeks ago. But I do get this. I can empathize. When you see, let's throw out some names here, because I don't know that it's just a Calvin issue. Like you said, 10 guys caught the ball and Williams wasn't one of them. When you see Ben Skoranek out there, man, he's an easy target. And I don't mean that in the passing sense. I mean that in the criticism sense, because he's not a name that's very familiar. You think he's just a special teams guy. This is a gunner. What's he even doing out there ahead of Williams? But when you see some of the plays that he's made, when you see some of he's not a great blocker, but he's a good blocker. Van Jefferson is not a great blocker, but he's a good blocker. You can do that with a lot of these guys, and you've still, if you're Arthur Smith, and I guess by extension, really Russell Wilson, you've got to make sure that you can trust that everybody knows what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to be. Now, that said, it's been a while. He's been here for a while. It's not quite like training camp in that you're not practicing every day, but it's been a while, and it would cover a pretty big portion of training camp if you were to overlap one on top of the other. There's another game coming up on Sunday. Go ahead and use him. It's okay to do that. Give him a shot or two. Give him an easy couple of routes. Give him stuff that's really basic. Tell him he's only going to be on the field for 3 potential routes. Have him become the Zen master of those routes. Let them come to him in his dreams. Okay? Do whatever it is that you got to do, but you got to get the more talented player out onto the field sooner rather than later. I believe that. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.